How's it going?
It's going. Here we are. Here we are. Another Black Civics Collective. How you doing, Mahmood?
I'm doing great. Another beautiful Sunday evening here in the great state of Ohio. How's it going in California?
It's another gray
Oh,
June
really?
gloom. Oh my God. And we had like a mild earthquake this morning. So,
Ooh.
there's always some fun happening on the left coast. And so today, I'm really excited about today's show. If you
I am
guys
too.
do not know, Asheville, North Carolina was one of the first municipalities to actually have like a reparations commission.
Mm,
And we got somebody from Asheville in the house that I definitely look forward to talking to. But the big
yeah.
news this week was,
The Donald Trump thing.
oh my God.
So he is the first president to actually be convicted of a crime, and
So
not just one, but 33 counts,
Like
something like
33, 34. My first question is, one, is he allowed to vote in his home state? I don't know where he
that.
really,
He's from
which home
Florida,
state
so
is
I,
his.
I, I don't know.
Is it
But
Florida or is it New
yeah,
York? Like, is
no,
he
he
able to
been they've been
even
kicked him out
vote?
of New York.
And then, like, most
Yeah.
felons have a hard time getting a job. So
Hmm.
how we giving him potentially
The biggest
the,
job.
I'm just asking questions over here. I just got questions.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really an interesting situation. That we're actually going to have a convicted felon running for president who's potentially going to win because last time I checked, he's up in all the polls. So that's going to be
That's the
interesting.
scary thing. I read that this conviction somehow made him more relatable, and I'm like,
Yeah.
only like in America can
Who
like
was
you
saying
fail up
that?
in that way. Only in America, and
Right.
everybody can't fail up. Please read between the lines of what I'm saying.
Exactly.
Only in America. Meanwhile, at the ranch, in better news, Juneteenth is coming.
Yes.
One of, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best holidays that we have, and
Absolutely.
for those that don't know, the origin of Juneteenth, June 19th, I think 1860,
65. Yes.
65. Okay, I was about to lie and say 63, but it was a few years
Right.
later
After
down
the
in
Emancipation Proclamation.
Galveston.
Yep.
The last people to kind of find out that the war was ending and that they were indeed free. So, for our ancestors who endured, we celebrate you. We celebrate Juneteenth. And what are our Juneteenth colors? Because I've seen all kinds of things on the internet.
The colors are red, white, and blue. They are not the Pan African colors. They are red, white, and blue. That has always been the color since the Juneteenth, 1865, and those will always be the colors.
I
And
mean, even the cake is red. It's red
right,
velvet
exactly.
cake is the cake,
Watermelon,
watermelon.
strawberry soda. Those are the traditions. So if we're going to celebrate, we need to celebrate it right.
We need to celebrate it right. And shout out to Ben Haith. Ben Haith was the creator,
Yes.
is the creator. He's still alive. He's the creator of the Juneteenth flag that we know with the single star. He wanted to do a little bit of homage to the star state, which is Texas. So
Hmm.
he had the single star, but then he kept the red, white, and blue because of the fact that we are Americans and we have
Yes.
pride in being Americans, and we live for our constitutional American dreams
Yep.
just like everybody else. So we want to recognize Brother Ben Haith, for giving us something that we could be proud of for a holiday that ultimately, we created. And so
Absolutely. And
Juneteenth is coming.
Memorial Day just passed, and that's another thing. We have people who fought in every single war since 1776. We have Black Americans fighting in every single war. So, this idea that we can't be patriotic or be proud to be American is ridiculous. And
I don't know
we
what
shed
they
blood for our
talking
freedom.
about. Real blood. Got purple hearts
Exactly.
and everything. Peace. Rest in peace, my Uncle Paul. Purple hearts in our family. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so this idea that our history is not American history, that's such like a misnomer that we gotta like fight back at it all the time. We gotta beat it down, beat it down, beat it down. I gotta say, okay, I'm wearing this shirt. I gotta do a shameless soul folk little. I got this little thing here in Leimert Park. Soul Folk is a all black vendor store, so every piece of garment, jewelry, nail polish, whatever they selling in there is a black creator that created the garment, the jewelry, the whatever, but I'm shouting them out because yesterday handing out some of our survey flyers, and we're gonna share our survey with the folks. Sharing our
Hmm.
survey flyers, I bumped into the one and only Miss Jaguar Wright, and Brother Odell, one of the producers from KBLA Radio, which is also in Leimert Park, and she was doing a live. I didn't even at first I didn't even really know it was her. She was doing a live. She put our flyer up and
Mm.
said, people, this is what we need to be more focused on. So I just want to shout, Jaguar, right, being in the neighborhood at Soul Folk yesterday
Absolutely.
with the people in Leimert. That was like a nice little moment, and I appreciate her, being real and being about it. We have not had very many artists, singers, sports athletes, whoever, entertainers that have really taken on this particular cause in a major way. And it was just really nice for her to, do a simple thing that means a lot to a small grassroots national organization like ours, because we do put in the work. So I just wanted to recognize her.
And as you guys can see at the bottom of the ticker, that is the survey that you should be taking and sharing with all of your loved ones, your coworkers, random people you see on the street. Share the survey, please.
Share the survey. When I don't, well, Juneteenth, we have the Juneteenth holiday coming. When you got folks, getting together, putting food on the grill or the barbecue, or you doing a sister circle, a brother circle, you going fishing, whatever the deal is, pull out your phones, have people scan the QR code. We will make sure we have this up on our social media so that people can just simply share, with family. So, yeah.
So let's talk about our mission a little bit as the Black Civics Collective. As you all well know at this point, because we talk about it every week, civics is the rights and obligations that everyone is owed as a citizen in this society. And some of the things that you can do to be civically engaged is, of course, vote. You can register people to vote for this upcoming election in November. You can take out a newsletter or the front page of a local newspaper, or you can join an organization such as NAASD. So, there are several different ways that you can get civically engaged, and we are here to remind you all of those ways.
You would be like Jaguar Wright and share our flyer and our poster to our survey, because the purpose of that survey is to actually prioritize policy for 2025. That's something that we
Yep.
are actively working on. We train people in policy, how to write policy, how to meet with your legislators. So do that. We always hear, like, what is it? The die or vote, vote or die,
Hmm.
or your ancestors died for the right to vote. And I'm like, they died for much more than the right to vote.
Exactly.
They died to be full-blown citizens, to actually be able to have some level of self-determination within the government that we know to be the United States government and their local, state, and municipal government. So for us, being civically active means advocating from where you
Right.
are
And
all
we
day,
always talk
every day.
about the obligation side of civics, but not the things that are owed. When we talk about, oh, your ancestors died for this, what about what they were told that they were owed, which is 40 acres and a mule, back in 1865? What happened to that? So if
Talk
we're gonna talk
about
about
it.
one side of it, we got to talk about both sides.
Talk about it. But that's the dominant culture side. That's not, sitting and talking to real people like us,
Right.
who live, who have stories, who have history. We have a different lens, and that's actually why we bring you Black Civics Collective twice a month, to make sure that the lens is not just dominant culture, but it's actually the descendants of persons enslaved in the United States, talking about the issues and the things that are truly, truly important to us. So, with that being said, we got to tell people, first of all, everybody, wherever you're following or watching this show, please follow us on YouTube at NAASDORG. We are trying to build up the YouTube, station. You have certain limitations when you only have 5 viewers. So we're trying to get our viewership up on YouTube. So even if you're watching us on X or Facebook, go to our YouTube channel and actually follow the channel. But make sure you like us, like the videos, share the videos, so that people can stay engaged with this modern reparations movement.
Absolutely. Is it time to bring our guest on?
It is. Let's bring up his flyer. He got a dope picture. I'm like, he gonna have to tell us who shot this. This photo sharp, hard. It's hard.
Absolutely. So, Rob Thomas is a highly respected community activist and leader based in Asheville, North Carolina. His personal experiences and deep-rooted connections to address and dismantle systemic inequities. He's a formerly, oh, sorry, as a formerly justice-involved individual who spent approximately 11 years incarcerated, Rob has a profound understanding of the challenges and disparities faced by people of color in America. His journey from incarceration to activism has served as a powerful testament to the resilience and transformation of a person. Rob has been a keynote speaker and facilitator at over 72 community related events, showcasing his exceptional skills in public speaking and community mobilization. Welcome, Rob Thomas.
Oh, thank you for having me on. Thank you for the compliments. I have to shout out my brother and close friend Tony Shivers with Still Smiling Photography here in Asheville. Yeah, he he done a lot of really good photos for me, and that's one of like a whole catalog that he's given me. And yeah, I thank you for the props.
We had to shout him out.
Definitely.
I haven't seen or talked to you in a while, so it's just good to see you. Father's Day is coming, so happy early Father's Day to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, let's get to it.
Rob, can you tell us a little bit about growing up in Asheville?
Um, yeah. So growing up in Asheville, I would say for the first 7 years of my life, I lived in a legacy predominantly black neighborhood called Shiloh. Um, Also, my parents were on drugs, and for me, I feel like the whole war on drugs and how drugs affected Black people in America. I feel like that's one of the biggest ignored disparities and statistics and harms that was created by our government. I mean, if we look at the Oliver North Contra scandal and how they shipped in tons of cocaine and funneled it into predominantly Black neighborhoods, especially in California, and how our government was never held accountable. Then on top of that, on the reverse end, they created the war on drugs to incarcerate our people and give them 100 times more time than what somebody would get for selling powdered cocaine, which was considered a white drug. And for me, that's one of the biggest things that probably affected my life because it my parents they actually had set their house on fire to collect the fire insurance money, and then had smoked it up, and then we lost our house, and I ended up moving in between and living with both of my grandmothers back and forth until around the age of like 14 and a half, where at that point in time I am now a drug dealer inside of the game, and like I was paying my own bills and I was staying by myself at that point. And so my upbringing in Asheville, you know, I kind of really didn't see other options at a young age. And what I mean by that is the people that were around me. Like I said, my parents were on drugs, and so I didn't really see a lot of doctors or lawyers in my community or anything of that nature. The people who I saw respected were drug dealers and individuals committing crimes. I also had very high grades in school, up until high school. I was pretty much a straight A student, academically gifted. And so I'm inside these white spaces where I'm not accepted either. Like, a lot of them didn't like me because my grades were higher than theirs. School kind of came naturally to me. I didn't have to do a whole lot of extra studying outside of school to make high grades. And then outside of class, I can't really say that I was accepted by the Black students either because I talked proper and things of that nature. And so around my eighth grade year, I started looking around. I wanted social status. I wanted friends. I wanted to be accepted amongst my peers, and I knew that I was never going to get accepted by my white students and friends. It was just always different. Um, and so like I looked around me, I seen what seemed to be attractive to my demographics, and yeah, I basically said I took myself down this road of internalized oppression, where I pretty much started showing every stereotypical aspect that there was about the negative ones about Black people, man, all the way from drug dealing to slang to I still kept my grades up fairly easily, but like I became partially a class clown. Those things I would do to obtain attention. And I can say that it worked. I mean, I got social status. I got girlfriends and things of that nature. And I made illegal money, but by the age of 16, I was in prison for 5 years and didn't get out till I was 21. Um, and so my upbringing in Asheville was kind of, when I think back on it, it's extremely weird. To where as me as an adult, I can see a lot of I see a lot of bad decisions I made, but I also understand the environment and the stimuli that influenced me to make those bad decisions. And I still hold myself accountable for the decisions because I made the decision at the end of the day. But who wants to feel like they're not a part of a community? Who wants to feel not accepted? Who wants to before I started selling drugs and stuff, my parents were on drugs, so I had like Walmart clothes and my shoes were cheap. We would go to Payless. We do shopping like twice a year at the beginning of the school year and then like at the middle. My parents, now they didn't abuse me or anything like that. I never went to bed hungry. I was never unclothed or anything, but I just didn't have a lot of the extra things. And I love my parents to death. They're great people. And I also understand what happened to them. You know what I mean? Like when it hit them, when that epidemic hit them, they didn't really know what they were dealing with or what they were getting into. My parents have told me the story of how they the first time they had tried it and how that even happened. And it's kind of similar today where you see this newer generation, whether they're getting addicted to pills or syrup or lean or whatever you want to call it. It was like that type of environment back then, only the thing was crack. And so like I don't even blame them. Like, when you look at how metric tons of cocaine was getting shipped into America to finance, a South American war for the benefits of our country, because they couldn't fund it officially, so they wanted to use drug money, and then they come and criminalize us for making a lot less profit margin than what they were making off of it. It just amazes me how none of these things have ever been rectified. How the ripple effects off that is not even being looked at. The broken homes, the trauma that was experienced, and the lives destroyed. And I can say intentionally because they knew,
Right.
they watched for decades, and that's just one part of my childhood that I would say deserves reparative justice. And a lot of people of my generation, us '80s babies, '90s babies, even the '70s, I think that's another one of those harms that needs to be looked into and rectified. Because it's like, I think about all the time, like, what if they would have never shipped in tons of cocaine? What if my parents were successful? Like, they almost had their house completely paid off. My father was a machine operator with a whole nother job on the side. My mother was a nurse and had two jobs. They were intelligent. They were hardworking. And then this thing comes into their life that, they were just completely unprepared for, did not know what it was. And like it destroyed not only my family, but like I grew up around several other people that was like me, that was less fortunate than me. So yeah, that's a little bit about
Yeah,
my.
you kind of spoke to my next question a little bit. I was going to ask you because Asheville has kind of gained this reputation as this progressive city in the South, but I wanted you specifically to speak about. Yeah, see, I see you smirking. So I wanted you to speak about the justice position of that reputation that it has compared to the inequities that you face and people like you have faced.
You know, for me, I have to ask people like, what's your definition of
Hmm.
progress? You
Hey.
know, because if we're looking at metrics, like we get worse every year. Like the opportunity/achievement gap, we got the fifth worst in the nation, and we've got the worst in North Carolina. Now, to me, that opportunity/achievement gap has also been utilized to predict how many of a said population or demographic is going to end up incarcerated. And so, with us having the worst, like we are literally funneling our black people here into prison, like at that,
Hmm.
at pretty much the highest metric rate in the state, fifth in the country, now fifth in the nation. And so just looking at that one metric alone, then you look at different things that was implemented, like urban renewal, where our government came and basically forced homeowners, business owners, black landowners to sell their land, or pretty much just take it. Um, like we had the biggest in the southeast. We lost hundreds of acres, and if you look here now, you see the outcomes of that. You see, like in 10 years ago, our population, we black people were 23% of the population. Right now, we're like around 6.7% of the population inside of
Wow.
Asheville City. No, inside of the city, we're close to 12 or 13. Inside of the county, we're at like 6.7. And it steadily declines. There's less opportunities. We don't own a whole lot of assets. The generational wealth gap is terrible. I mean, the average single black mother here in Asheville makes about around $14,500 a year. You know what I mean? It's
Wow.
well below the poverty line. And like progressive, like what have we progressed at? Like a lot of things are performative. You know, I hate to say it. Like a lot of things that get done are either done to say, hey, we check off this box. So we did this and we tried it, or something that looks good. I haven't really seen a lot of things that have even slowed the needle down, less known move it. Especially when COVID hit, like all of these metrics exponentially got worse, and it's still on the decline. And so, you know, I would be hard pressed to ask where specifically is the progress at. Can you show me the numbers in the progress? Now, I can say that there are black people here in positions of power. You know what I mean? We have black councilmen and councilwomen. We have black commissioners. We have black city manager, black county manager. We have black people in different positions of power. But again, you know, what I've really learned is sometimes it's not about the people. It's the system itself. If you don't have a person who's intentionally trying to disrupt said system, their job is automatically tailored to where they're going to help perpetuate said system. And that isn't speaking bad on any of these individuals or anything of that nature. It's just it's a lot more complex than having a black face in a space, or a couple tokenized blacks. But yeah, I would be hard pressed to ask, can you show me the metrics on this progress that you speak of?
That's almost like the so-called progress of having a black president, and having a black vice president. And what has that done, for reparations? What has that done to actually bring justice to black folks, particularly those of us who descend from persons who were enslaved here? Like,
Right.
that didn't happen. Like HR 40 didn't get passed, and we had 8 years of a black president, and we at the end of 4 years with our black VP. And so having black folks in high places, what is it? Black faces in high places doesn't translate to progress,
Right.
as you just said. So there's that. I love this from your bio: outspoken, undaunted, revolutionary. So, okay, those are powerful words. You have, the nonprofit, you're a super decorated community activist. You've told us about the life. I got to imagine your life itself has impacted your desire to get into advocacy. But how did you, come into advocacy space?
I guess so. Whenever I came home from the last 6 years that I had did, I ended up studying, getting a job in commercial driving as what I had planned. I created several business plans while incarcerated the last 6 years, and at the same time, I started getting more involved with community stuff, like showing up for public input sessions. I remember the first thing I was questioning was like affordable housing, where the affordability rate is like 80%, 60%, 30% AMI. And you look at the average income of a black person, and we're not even at the 30% AMI. And like, I'm also watching my city be gentrified. So I remember, getting in kind of like a small debate with a city councilman who's actually now a close friend, believe it or not. And that's kind of how I first, like, I wasn't planning to like get a job in this. Like, I was just showing up to see what I could, kind of get involved in. But I also hated commercial driving. Like the companies I worked for, that, like, to be honest, they was extremely racist. It was mostly white people. A lot of them had Confederate flags tattooed on them. They had Confederate memorabilia on their car.
That is just incredible and believable at the same time.
Yes. So I was in there just for the money, saving up my money to move on to better things. And like, this job came open, and my partner that I was with then, like, she actually introduced the job of the RJC to me. I'm like, people like me don't ever get jobs like this. Like, they're gonna look at my background and not think twice about interviewing me. And then she had also showed me the line where it said, being previously justice involved will not be a hindrance to consideration for this job. And I was like, okay, I'll try it out. And I went through 3 interviews, and I got the job. And my first 90 days was kind of learning the playing field. Like, I'd never been inside of the nonprofit industrial complex. And like, yeah, I've learned.
It is an industrial complex, though. I mean, we'll get into that a little bit later, but it legit is an industrial complex.
Yes. So I had a lot of lessons to learn that first year. I had to learn the political environment. How do you actually create and manipulate and use political capital? How do you use social capital to produce political capital as well? And how do you build upon both? And like, how to even organize? Like a lot of it, I could say, I was lucky enough to when my prison terms or whatever, like I still had a lot of social capital in my communities. Like I ain't never snitched on nobody, and I still had quote unquote my street cred or whatever that equates to. And so it's easy for me to connect with people from marginalized communities here in Asheville, to whereas I wasn't looked at somebody who was either fake or sold out or wasn't really quote unquote about that life or however you want to term it. And so, it was fairly easy for me to organize a lot of people just because, people we have this network in our communities to where, you want to know about somebody that's out in my town so small, you can ask around and you can know about me. And people, know about the things I used to do. And so they were like, okay, he might really be a real one. They also know that I was intelligent. A lot of people know me. And so I just kind of tied everything in together. And, I say what also helped me was my community. And then 2020, like it was a perfect storm because now you've got all these white people with white guilt or just built up energy to want to do something to help black people, which has faded a lot now that it's 2024. So
Right.
I was so I was able to use that as well. And I also studied a little bit. I was like, okay, so this is the arc of movements. Right now, people, we at the climax, what I mean, we're gonna have all these people supporting it, and it's gonna drop down. And I kind of went strategic, and also I was like, okay, I'm gonna need some type of champion on the inside, and that's when I started building the relationship with Keith Young, who was a councilman that I originally was debating with about affordable housing, and then I also had my allies as well, where David Greenson, he was a white man who was working with me. And his primary job was to bring all these white people together, while my job was to do a lot of the leadership in black community. Like I'd hold all black meetings to where any black community. And back then it was Zoom. Like it was so much easier to organize. Everybody had a lot more time because you got a pandemic where people, this hamster wheel that everybody's caught on every day, it kind of slowed down and stopped. And people can wake up and kind of see what's happening and also have time, disposable time to put into it. So it's like everything happened at the perfect moment. Like I don't feel like I'm some super special human or some extremely intelligent individual. It's just like all the pieces happen at the perfect moment for what I would call a perfect storm to happen to where we were able to capitalize off of it. And, I could say that the creation of that resolution was actually put like a placeholder on time because we looked at movements. It's like, okay, everybody all energized right now, but 6 months from now, they gonna forget all about black people.
Mm-hmm.
So, so what can we put in place so that we can still access the political capital created off of this? And then that's when I reached out to Cam Howard, actually. He was the co-chair of NCOBRA at that time, and he took out like 2 or 3 hours one day and on a Zoom meeting and pretty much educated me and David Greenson and gave us all this knowledge and information on the history of reparations, the wording, the language, and we studied it and we created a campaign in Asheville. It took us like 2 weeks and work also Dr. Dwight Mullen, where he crafted the resolution. And I remember me and Keith, kind of reviewing it, and they took it into that city council check-in, and they took some things out and they added some things. One of the biggest things I hate that they added was the word minority, because that takes it out of specifically for black people and also white women.
We're gonna pause you right there for a quick second because we have to take a commercial break. But I do want to say there is someone here, Big U, Dante Henley, who's a big time Crip, big time Crip. And one of the things he said, for our community, particularly our men who wind up being caught up like in the system, who wind up drug dealing, whatever the thing is, gang banging, being caught up in just how the disparities exist in our different communities, is that they have to become politically active. Like that's their step into manhood from the things that they might have done. And it's just like you laid it out. And the crazy thing is your story is very similar to the comedian Ali Sadiq, based out of Houston. It's almost like y'all could be telling the same life story, and yet you're in North Carolina. and he's all the way down, in Texas. So that to me says a lot as well. But we are going to bring it back with Brother Rob Thomas, and we're going to talk about Asheville reparations. We'll talk even a little bit about Dr. Mullins, who you just mentioned, who was the chair. And when we come back from this commercial break, so let's just take a quick break. You are here with Black Civics Collective, me and McAdoo the Great. We will be right back.
Welcome. We are the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants. Our mission is to advance the national movement for reparations. The United States Office of Management and Budget set 5 minimum standards for collecting racial data. The Black race is defined as a person having origin in any of the Black racial categories of Africa. NAASD has recommended that the OMB disaggregate data to accomplish 3 goals: decouple race from ethnicity, create an ethnic term that exclusively identifies descendants of persons enslaved in the United States, and create an ethnic term that preserves the American freedmen political status. The ethnogenesis of the African American identity is a result of ethnocide. The identity is from a people with shared history. Race, identity, plus ethnic identity equals peoplehood. Together, we can fix this dilemma with the OMB. We can build a coalition, grow the movement, and create a unified demand. What can you do to get involved? You can join NAASD today at www.naasd.org. You can email the OMB using our toolkit, or you can donate to NAASD so that we can continue this work. Thank you for your time, and stay connected with us on social media at NAASDORG. We are on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You can also sign up for our newsletter at www.naasd.org.
All right. We are back from our commercial break, and we just got to tell people, follow us on social media at NAASDORG across all platforms. Make sure you like and share the video, subscribe, share with friends, and also sign up for our newsletter at www.naasd.org. And welcome back to another episode of Black Civics Collective with Brother Rob Thomas out of Asheville, North Carolina. In your intro, we talked about Asheville being one of the earlier municipalities, right? So we've got some years under the belt for Asheville. So let's just talk about you were, and the reason I wanted to talk to you about Asheville reparations is because you really were there from the very beginning with that resolution that came out of your city council. There was in that resolution, they wanted to develop short, medium, and long-term recommendations to create generational wealth and boost economic stability and mobility. And so that is a running theme in the work that we do within AASD.org. The economic factor is a big factor. That's something Dr. Darity talks about. who, he is a premier speaker about reparations, and he's a premier economist down at Duke, which is in North Carolina, Duke University. Tell us about like the resolution, and you were mentioning things that were in and added, and talk to us about the good and bad of the resolution itself, of the legislation.
The good thing, I guess, one of the most important things of it was the creation of a commission to involve and include community. My main focus then was allowing community to be involved inside of the decision making and part of the reparative justice that would even potentially happen. And so that was super important to me. Another was the admittance to some of the harms that were outlined within the document and the resolution. And I was hoping an in-depth, research or exploration into said harms would also happen. That would give the ability to do some form of positive racial discrimination legally through law by implementing remedies to said intentional negative discrimination. Another positive, I would say, then was the Office of Equity and Inclusion was named as kind of a mechanism of accountability, or had some power in saying what would happen. But there's a lot of things that correlate with that, to where they were kind of dismantled. Several iterations of staff quit for different reasons. But the most negative thing I would definitely say was the inclusion of the word minority and not keeping it specifically Black. That's probably one of the biggest things that was, problematic to me in the beginning. And now, at the part of the process that we're at right now, our commission has, I was just at a retreat yesterday, from 9 in the morning till 5 in the evening, reparations commission retreat. And I specifically chose not to apply to be on the commission because I was then the ED of the Racial Justice Coalition. And they had also created a rule to where, I forget the exact wording, but me being ED of an organization specifically doing reparations advocacy would have made it extremely complicated for me to even be a commissioner, where I could potentially be positive.
What?
Yeah.
They did not do that to me in Los Angeles. Why they do that to you? Why they do you like that, Rob? What is that?
It wasn't just me. It was also Keith Young as well, where they tried to do. It was they let's just say they didn't necessarily want me in, but at the same time, I didn't necessarily want it to be in. I felt like I could be way more powerful as an outside entity supporting the commissioners who were on the inside. And that's the positionality that I then set the RJC up, which was my previous organization that I was with, and myself, to kind of be a support and be able to say the things that they can't say.
That was very strategic and very necessary. And for folks watching, that's what's called the inside versus outside approach. Because, and I will say this, as a commissioner for the city of Los Angeles, and again, these words right now are my own. I am not speaking in my capacity as a commissioner, because you got to do things like that just so you can say what you even want to say. But what I have found in that capacity is there are limitations. You have to comply to whatever governing bodies, but ethics standards, what you can and cannot do. When it comes to research, whether or not you have an affiliation, there's a lot of things that you have to kind of disclose in order to even work in that capacity. And it's limited because you can, it's so crazy. You can write, policy or whatever the recommendations are, right, from the particular body that you're working for, whatever commission you're working for. But then you can't go into a public meeting and tell people to support what you just wrote, even though that's the purpose of your commission. Like, it's very, and so you being outside as an activist, a community activist, you can say whatever you want to say. You're not bound and restricted, in that capacity. And that's that work in the inside and outside. So that was very strategic, very smart.
Thank you. Looking at the process in Los Angeles and California at large, I mean, y'all's process has been amazing. I wish that we would have created such an in-depth study of the harms You know what I mean? And been so intentional as y'all have. Like every step of this process has been a fight. As I have this new organization, and I've been building out this massive timeline. A lot of people don't know because us as advocates and activists, like we'll fight a battle and then it's on to the next. Like okay, we got them to do this, and that's right on to the next. And a lot of the battles, like sometimes you don't even hear about them because they're behind the scenes battles that don't reach the newspaper. And I'm always disheartened because I know where our process could be at right now. Like we could be 10 to 20 million dollars ahead. We could have some type of financial investment vehicles that create compound interest at this point. And right now, like I feel like I shouldn't even be at a point where I'm even advocating against city or county individuals. Like I should be already in the private sphere, looking at some of these private entities around here that have benefited off the same harms that the city was either implemented. And we have direct action at our disposal. But if my capacity has been continuously being used to influence, these county and city bodies, I don't have unlimited resources. I only have so many hours, so many volunteers, so many staff, so much brain power. I have to focus it over here. I feel like we should be at a way different point in our reparations process if it was just a lot more collaboration and a lot less antagonistic chess moves on the board, so to speak. And, I've tried many different things to kind of, mend relationships and like, like we're in this together. But, it's just complicated. Some of it's political, some of it's ego driven personalities. Like we're dealing with a lot of different individual people, and we're also dealing with a system that, for these people to continue getting compensated and doing their jobs, like they have people that they have to answer to, whether we're talking about electeds that get voted in a city that's 80% white people, or we're talking about staff that work inside of a government where, their supervisors want things done a specific way. And so like, it's just so complex to deal with these different things and still try to influence it in a direction of equity or reparative justice. So yeah, I'm sorry. I hope that answered the question. I sometimes go on a tangent.
No,
that's perfect.
You did.
So I wanted to ask you about, other municipal reparations efforts. So like we've seen it done, like we said, in Los Angeles. We've seen it in Evanston, Illinois, up by Chicago, Detroit. All these things, all these cities have in common is that they're outside of the South. They're in the West, they're in the Midwest, they're in the East. This one is special because it's in the South, and the legacy of chattel slavery, the legacy of Jim Crow. And you spoke specifically about gentrification in this city. A lot of people don't associate gentrification with a southern city, right? Like you talked about, the population decline from 13% down to 6%, even though North Carolina's black population is 22%. Can you talk about like how Asheville compares and contrasts, even with the adversaries, right? It's completely different. You have people who are the sons and daughters of the Confederacy in that city of Asheville, as opposed to somewhere like New York, which is more multicultural. Can you just talk about how Asheville reparations compares to these other cities?
Yeah. To be honest, one of the biggest, like Asheville is extremely weird. Like I've been to a few different cities, a few different states implementing reparations. What I mean weird is it's just so different. Like for instance, North Carolina is a red state. It's predominantly Republican. Asheville is like this blue oasis. And so our Congress is even against our city. One of our congressmen, Chuck Edwards, when back in 2020, when I was doing this divest invest campaign against law enforcement, like I remember him coming out publicly and saying, like, if Asheville divests from or defunds the police, I'm going to defund Asheville. Like it's that type of vibe dealing with with our state electeds in Congress. And so Asheville within itself is already like completely different than even the state we live in. I will also add that like you would think that like, okay, I'm in this South City with all of this historical racism that's probably a long list of white people that are hindering up my processes or something. But it's not necessarily been like that. Like I say, things here where they try to seem progressive, they have employed a lot of black people. And again, that's what I mean by like just getting a black face into a seat of power or inside of a space isn't necessarily the solution. Like I look at ideology. Like, how do you feel about why black people are in the situation they're in America? Like that's an important question to me. You think we're lazy, or can you connect all the dots from 16, 19 up to now and see that a lot of these things were intentional? Because that, like, all of these thinking, it's gonna control how you actually the solutions that you look forward to implementing, or the conversations you're willing to have, or even your motivation to rectify certain things in a certain way. And so, again, Asheville is extremely different, to where we do have a lot of Black individuals in different positions of power. So I was disheartened to see, like, when I got into racial justice work 4 years ago, I'm thinking, like, I'm gonna be out here fighting racist white people. Can't necessarily say it's been that way, because the city claiming to be progressive, like, the white people usually are more compelled to follow Black leadership, or give space, to whereas they I feel like the system itself evolves. Like, it's like, okay, we're in this progressive space, we need to hire some Black people who either maybe kind of think like us but not exactly, or at least willing to play ball with us. And like, when you look at the jobs that they put out, where it takes a certain amount of indoctrination into what I would like to say white supremacy culture. Like, for you to even get this job, you've got to be inside of city government for 10 to 15 years. And like, you ain't gonna make it that long in there unless you're a certain type of person. You need this type of education. And then they look into your background and you show up at these interviews. Like, they're not gonna hire a me. You know what I mean? They're not gonna hire somebody who's wants to push the needle, who wants to go against the grain and create something new. And that's the way these systems are structured. So a lot of the individuals I deal with, I definitely wouldn't just say, like, oh, they're all sellouts. Like, no, it's nothing like that at all. Like, I think they're all well intended. It's just sometimes we disagree on what the solutions are, and the risks that need to be taken. Where I can understand some of the things I might be asking some of them to do, they might look at it as political suicide.
Right.
But then I'm out in my community and I'm looking at real suicide. I'm looking at real murder. I'm looking at the real drug epidemic, and I'm looking at the outcomes, where a lot of these people, they've been inside of these systems. They may have family members that are affected by it, but they're no longer affected by the things that I'm fighting against. What I mean? They haven't really touched it in a while, because, they've had a certain amount of success, and they also have to look out for themselves. I've been attacked. Me being in this situation is, I could go down a list of how this has caused me several traumatic experiences in my life in the past 4 years, all the way to being attacked financially, being, threatened a physical attack, and all of these things. So I get it. Like, it's not popular to take.
It's not. Say it again, Rob. Say it again.
It's not popular. And, we get made example of sometimes, what I mean? But it is what it is. And so, a lot of times, and we're in the South, but I'm in a weird city in the South. Like, a lot of these other cities, they don't have a lot of Black leadership, and it's a different form of oppression. And so it's like we're here. Like, the biggest issue I see is a lot of internalized oppression. And we all have it. Like, I have to root it out of myself as well.
Call it out. Call it out. People don't want to say it, but I'm like, it exists. It's real.
Yes. So the system will find people of different demographics to perpetuate itself. If it sees that, I mean, I swear the system evolves, man. Like, 20 years ago, set up differently. You barely had Black people in power. You barely had Black people in government here in Asheville. And then things change. You've got a lot more women-bodied individuals in positions of power, and like, things change. But when you look at the ideologies, and policies even change, but still is only there's a line that you can push it to, right? You know what I mean? It's like, if you look at the 70s, there was a line they could push it to. You look at the 80s, there was another line they could push it to. You look at the 90s, another line. And now we're here in 2020, and like, I'm trying to push it to the 2050 line, but I'm still in 2020. So it's like, and that's what I feel like.
That's the realest thing, though, because you gotta believe, honestly, to keep getting up and doing this work, like, you gotta believe that what you're doing is going to happen tomorrow. Even though realistically it could happen years from now, you gotta believe that it's fast tracked, that the energy that we're in right now is exactly like you said, the perfect storm. Like, you gotta believe that we are in this cycle where we're ready to take, a 30-year jump in maybe 10 years. You got to believe that, because information is moving way faster than it was moving in the 90s, way faster than it was moving for sure in the 70s. And you got to believe, like, with that fast track of movement of just information alone, like, the world has to be ready for the change. I don't know. That's how I think about it sometimes, for real, for real. We got 10 minutes left. And we didn't get any audience questions because I wanted to see if anybody had any questions, but I did want to shout out Restitution Radio because their comment was, damn, this is like experiencing deja vu. And I've got to believe that from, you know, like I said, from Texas to New York to Chicago, Detroit, you know, South Central Los Angeles to Virginia to, you know, wherever we are, Las Vegas, Nevada, we do as a people have these experiences just because we have been through all the things at the same time. You know, after Emancipation Proclamation, people were making strides. They were entering government. You know, they were finding a way. And then we had like the bloody murder of the Red Summer. You know, after that terrorism, folks was like, okay, we got to start making an exodus. The exodus was a slow exodus for like the next 30 years or so, where folks were leaving the South and going to the North. And then we do the civil rights battle. And we think we could take a breath. We took a small breath, and then it was like the drugs, you know, the war on drugs happened. And so just people don't like think about our existence in this country like in those ways. You know, they think about us as it relates to Coca-Cola, but even black people drink Pepsi because Coca-Cola didn't want to put black people in a commercial. Like, there's real things that sort of have happened, and people don't want to listen to those things. But I want to make sure people can reach you. And then I have just like, this will be, I guess, our last question, because time goes fast here on the Black Civics Collective.
Like a blur.
You dropped so much science. You dropped so much science. But one of the things I did see that I thought was interesting with Asheville was that they were voting on sales of city-owned land. And I'm like, well, if y'all got the land during what it was a time period that land was even acquired, I feel like that land, you know, came from Black people, like eminent domain that they never used it for that renewal period, because the same thing happened again, no matter where you were, Los Angeles, New York, that urban renewal is what they called it, you know, in the North, but it was that same kind of renewal. So how are they selling land that technically belonged to Black people? And then the last question is, supposedly they put a budget line, or the request from the city council was to put a budget line, you know, in for the Repair Black Folks in perpetuity. I'm kind of down with that. You know, that's along with our one in the federal government to have a Freedmen's Bureau, you know, that stands for the duration of this country to make sure that we whole. Can you talk to those two things and then let people know how they can reach you, stay in touch, follow what's going on in Asheville?
Yes, I'll definitely try to do this as concisely and quickly as possible. I know I can be long-winded. So the first one, as soon as we got the resolution implemented, then switched gears and created a campaign to get a moratorium placed on all city-owned lands that was taken through urban renewal. That was the next immediate step that we did. The city, they tried to sneak 2 deals through, you know, outside of that moratorium that we obtained. One of them was White Labs. And this was before we, you know, I wasn't really on planning and zoning and the committees and how they use committees to speed up decisions. So another learning moment. So then I, you know, organized volunteers, started attending, we started, you know, monitoring that. But I was able to, wasn't able to disrupt the White Lab sale. So that's why the 2.1 was added to the reparations bucket. It's like, all right, if y'all gonna sell it, then you got to put this money in the reparations fund. So we advocated for that, got them. The second was a Haywood Street congregation was a homeless, you know, houseless initiative. Church ran by a white pastor, great individual, great initiative. I'm like, yo, this is land was taken from Black people. We deserve to have the right to say what we want done with it. So I went directly in this community, Southside, started organizing people, Black people specifically. And then also there were white community members who were against it for other reasons, you know, the NIMBY, not in my neighborhood type people. But anyway, our goals were aligned. So I teamed up with them for a quick moment and we worked things out and we was able to disrupt that. I went directly after the fund. It was going to give it to this pastor for $1, along with $1 million loan to develop it and all these other things. And I'm like, why you can't do that to a Black entity, a Black corporation, a Black initiative? You know, we don't need this type of paternalism saying that this individual is the only one that can steward something like this in our community. So we disrupted that and we was able to get that added back under the moratorium. The second piece was the in perpetuity. Yeah, so later on down the line, after countless times trying to get more funding from the city and the county, what I actually wanted was some type of financial vehicle created that could create some compound interest, and also some type of more diversified revenue. And this has never really been ideated or thought out, and other things I'm disappointed about. But we were able to advocate, and influence the city and the county into putting in 500,000 apiece in perpetuity. I will say that's also a trick word, because if you get the wrong council, the wrong commissioners in there, anything that is created by a council can also be disbanded or disrupted or destroyed by council. And this is the same thing. If we get a year from now the wrong individuals in office and they forget reparations, we done with that, they could technically figure out how to stop that from happening. Right now, the council members that we have, the commissioners that we have, they're definitely still down with it. But that word in perpetuity, to me, unless the community stays on top of it, unless we pay attention to who we're voting in the office, that could completely go away. How you could reach out and support me, please go to OURavl.org. That's OURavl.org, and click on the donate button. Like I said, it's a newer organization, and we're trying to do some fundraising right now. It's got what's needed immediately is going to be the accountability mechanism after these recommendations are submitted to our electeds and actually given to department heads inside of the city and the county offices to implement. Direct cash payments is one of them that we're looking at, and also a land acquisition. And I've studied so many different ways of how to make this realistic, all the way from a 501c3 that's set up in a membership format that all the membership is black, to where they can then kind of skate around the FHA laws, and they can restrict the use of said lands to the membership, and not technically go against the law.
That's why they don't want you in the room, Rob. You too out the box for them. They're not ready. They're not ready. You are an example of what I say reparations needs to happen, because I promise you, America, the gross domestic product of this country will skyrocket due to brains and free thought like Brother Rob Thomas here. You have been an amazing guest. Thank you so much for being with us here at Black Civics Collective.
Thank you for bringing your insight, your education, your life story. All of it was just amazing. This is one of the best episodes we've had yet.
Thank you. This time went by extremely fast. I enjoyed it.
Until next time. Thank you so much, Rob. Until next time. It's always good to see you. You have an amazing mind, and I'm glad you were able to make time for us today.
Definitely. Anytime.
All right. And so that is another episode. What is our next episode, Mahmoud?
Is it July 2nd?
No, we got one more this month. I think it's June 21st. June 21st, June 22nd. I'm getting hand signals from Dana.
Yes,
I don't know. It's that 20-something.
Yeah, it's the 20th something.
In June. This is terrible. But we plugging it anyway. The 23rd. She giving me 3 fingers.
23rd. Okay.
So, folks, please like and share, subscribe on the YouTube channel. Even if you watch us on X, even if you watch us on Facebook, go on over there to YouTube and go ahead and subscribe, because we're trying to build out that channel. Please make donations. You can always donate at www.naasd.org. And can we bring up our survey flyer one more time so we can plug that before we close out? We got that QR code, y'all. 1 minute. We hopping out of here, but scan the barcode, take the survey, because we are prioritizing policy in 2025, and we need your help in order to do it. McAdoo.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody behind the scenes for running the show. They're doing an amazing job. Everything's, right on time. You see us fumbling with the next date, but they telling us, they putting up fingers. So thank you, everybody, man.
All right. Until next time, this has been another episode of the Black Civics Collective. Peace, fam.
Peace and reparations.